What's up, guys? Mickey Gamonal here with Gamonal Tutors, doing another mini quiz Monday. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, and now I'm doing them a little bit different. Everyone's welcome to attend. So if you need ASVAB help and you want some free assistance, meet me Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to be doing these every single week moving forward, trying to help you get into the best possible score. So if you're interested, definitely feel free to show up. One of the places you can find me is going to be at my school profile. So I am on school and it's a free community. So you can go in there. I'm going to be posting things in there to help people increase their score. I think I got my beautiful wife online. Are you there? She's in the kitchen right now, actually, but she's here. So thanks for coming to my mini quiz Monday. Anyway.
Whoa!
All right, awesome, awesome. Okay, thanks, baby. Anyway, so yeah, we'll get into some math questions. Usually is what I do is math questions, but I've heard lately that maybe people need more help with English because I'm always teaching math, and that's fine. We'll do some word knowledge instead. Word knowledge is actually worth twice as much as the other ones when it comes to your AFQT, which is that big score between 0 and 99 or 1 and 99. So word knowledge is a really valuable test and it happens in 9 minutes. So it's one of those tests that can really raise your score quickly or lower your score very quickly. So it is an underrated exam. A couple other places you can find me, I just want to mention real quick. You can always check me out on ASVAB Domination podcast on Spotify. Up to 43 episodes so far there. And then, of course, on Instagram, you can find me as well. I use this is pinned to my highlights on Instagram because it's super underrated. A lot of people don't think about the timing per question, and that's something that you can always practice. So if that's something that you wanted to get practice in, you can always do that as well. Hey, Emily, thanks for joining us. But yeah, so are you there? Go ahead. All right. So yeah, without any further ado, we'll get into some word knowledge. There's a lot of different places where you can source questions, but one of my favorites is going to be the one that the Army officially puts out, and that's this ASVAB app over here. So I'm just going to go through a couple questions, tell you about why I select what answers I select, and hopefully you can take something away from this that you can bring into your next ASVAB exam. We'll just do the quick challenge. All right. Now, before going into it, I do, like I say, I like to use this page a lot. So word knowledge, if we look here, word knowledge, you only have 40 seconds per question, and you do approximately 15 questions in 9 minutes. And so it's one of those tests that goes super duper quick. So you want to be able to not kind of speed through, but you want to be used to that kind of high speed type of test taking. So if you're thinking, okay, we only have maybe 10, 15 seconds to read through, and then from there we got to go through and answer right away. So just be ready for that. Gage, my buddy Gage joined me as well. So I got my wife and my friend on the meeting today, just because it's the first mini quiz Monday in a long time, and it actually happens to be my birthday. So thanks for coming, brother. I'm happy you're here. If you can hear me. Yeah, my man. Nice. You're kind of muted, but you're here, man. So I'm happy you're here.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, what up, brother?
What's up? How's it going, people?
What up? Thanks, man. Thanks for coming. How's it going today?
It's good now. It's finally almost over.
Heck yeah. Cool. Right on. Okay, so I'm just doing word knowledge questions, brother. Since you're here, I'll ask you, man. Are you down? A little call and response. I don't know if it's safe while driving. Maybe not.
Yeah. Uh, I'm a little driving right now, so
Okay, okay, okay. No worries. Drive safe, man. All right. So Jimin wanted to keep his father's school ring for posterity. And then you have to figure out what posterity means. So this is what you call a context question, right? You can blank out the word, you can ignore the word posterity and try to make the guess using just the context. Another thing you can look at is all four of those answers, one of them has to be right. So you want to treat those four answers like they're hints to the question. So Jimin wanted to keep his father's school ring for posterity, for future generations, memorabilia, proof of the past, or investment. Personally, this would be a tough question for me just because posterity, I think, has to do with the past, but all of these have to do with the past. Maybe not investment. Future generations seems like the most accurate to me. And that's one of the hardest things about word knowledge is there may be multiple answers that are right, and you have to pick the rightest, which is oftentimes a little bit subjective. It's something that one person could argue one way, another person could argue another. But when you don't know what to do, you should guess, especially on a test like this where you only get 40 seconds per question. So we're going to try future generations. Again, I don't know for sure. Woo! I got lucky. And the problem with getting lucky like that is I didn't learn anything from that question. If I would have guessed wrong, it would have explained what the right answer is and why. And then I can kind of expand my vocabulary. And so if you've ever looked at any of my lessons previously on word knowledge, I always recommend creating a word bank. And in that word bank, you're going to have the word, the definition, and the meaning. And so you would add the word posterity. And even though I've heard it a lot of times, I don't know the official definition. So I'd want to add the official dictionary definition into there and then move on to the meaning. What does it mean to me so that I can remember the word posterity moving forward? Apparently, future generations is a fine meaning there. All right. When Captain Jones exited the army, he decided to practice philanthropy and dedicate his life to feeding the poor. Philanthropy means. So again, we have a context question. We got some work that we have some words around the word to use to give hints to the answer. Philanthropy either means attractiveness, opportunism, generosity, or discourtesy. Interesting. So me, I was in Peace Corps way back in the day, and a lot of people call it philanthropy. It's philanthropic. And so this is using the prefix of phil, which actually means brotherhood. So like Philadelphia is the school or the town of brotherly love is what they say. So that's how I always remember that. Philanthropy is kind of going to be helping people out, looking out for others. And so in this case, I would go with generosity. Sweet, 2 for 2. Word knowledge, my boss is a big proponent of developing time management skills. Proponent means. So this is something a proponent uses, you want to focus again on the prefix here, pro, which is for, right? So if I am pro-choice, it means I believe in a woman's right to choose. If I am pro-life, it means I believe in life, I guess you could say. I mean, they make these words kind of intentionally, but you can use that pro to be your for whatever it is. And so my boss is a big proponent, as opposed to opponent, which is to oppose something and fight against it, a proponent of developing time management skills. So critique is almost the opposite of advocate. And that's something that you want to pay attention to as well when it comes to word knowledge questions. Anytime you see opposites in the answer, usually, not always, but usually one of them's right. And the reason is because they want you to guess the opposite. They want you to overthink it, which is what most people do when it comes to a test, a multiple choice test where there's a lot of stakes. People tend to overthink because they want to give their best effort. And so a lot of people here might pick critique because they know that's the opposite of proponent. But it should be advocate. Sweet, advocate. All right, only a couple questions to go, and I'm going to kind of burn through these ones a little bit faster. Emily, I'm going to come to you after these questions to see if you had any questions you wanted covered. My best friend and my wife are on the meeting as well, so you're the only actual ASVAB student who may want to improve their score. So if you did have any questions, just be ready for those at the end. All right. Following the disturbance, town officials felt the need to augment. All right, cool. Following the disturbance, town officials felt the need to augment the laws pertaining to mass demonstrations. Augment. So to augment, I know, is to change. And so I got to figure out which word best means to change. Repeal is to take away. Criticize is to decry, like say that's negative. Expand and evaluate. Dang, neither of these are that easy. I would go with expand here because that does change something. Evaluate, criticize, and repeal. I mean, repeal is to change something too, but it's just to take it away. It's a little bit too vague. Criticize and evaluate doesn't necessarily change the thing. It just means to think about the thing. So in this case, I'd go with expand. All right. Although Specialist King was just joking around, his squad leader thought he was being impertinent. There we go. And negatively counseled him. So impertinence probably something negative. Let's figure out what it is. Tedious, amusing, annoyed, or rude. I would go with rude. Tedious is the same as annoying. And so this is another great example. If you see synonyms in the answer, annoying and tedious could be considered synonyms. Tedious is like repetitive, having to do the same thing over and over again, which could be annoying. So they're similar. They're not exactly the same word. They don't have the exact same meaning, but I would get rid of both of them as answer choices because they're a little bit too close. Rude, I think, is going to make the most sense here. Sweet. All right, I believe this is the last question. Oh no, two questions, 6 of 7. Sergeant Matthews focused on obtaining promotion points in order to aid in the furtherance of his career. Furtherance, advancement, destruction, inheritance, finance, going with advancement. And you kind of want that level of speed. Cynthia is a drama queen. She uses hyperbole in almost every sentence. Something I want to pause to say here is hyperbole, you may not know how to say that, right? It may look like hyperbole, which is what it looks like, and that's fine. The test doesn't check to see how good you are at pronouncing the words. But hyperbole usually means like it's hyperbolic, which is a math term, which is my jam. Anything that's hyperbolic means it just shoots straight up. So it's like an exaggeration. So she uses hyperbole in almost every sentence. That means she's always exaggerating. And exaggeration is one of the answers there, so that makes it really easy for me. Cool, 7 of 7. And I wouldn't oftentimes I don't get them all right here. So, you never know. But like I said, you learn more from the mistakes. So if I would have guessed all 7 wrong, I would have had a lot more information to parse through. I could have learned about the other words. I could have learned about the other selections and that kind of thing. So anytime that you're studying, if you're making a lot of mistakes, just remember that what that really means is that you're learning a lot. Anytime you're making a ton of mistakes, that's where you're learning. If you're getting everything right, it's really hard to learn from that experience. So keep that in mind. All right, Emily, I do have a whiteboard here in case you have any questions. Was there anything that you wanted covered specifically?
Right now, no. I was taking the notes of the words that you were going through right now and figure also like having in mind what it means.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So
So that
I'll
was helping me a lot.
Awesome. Right on, right on. Yeah. Then that's what we're here for. So just to go over that a little more in depth, I recommend a word bank. So if you're taking notes, that's great, but a lot of it's going to come down to being organized in your note taking and understanding what you're writing. Especially if you've been out of school for a little while, you want some sort of a system, some sort of a process so that you can revisit what you've learned in a way that you're going to remember. So my word bank recommendation is going to be the word, the definition, and the meaning. And so for this, you can actually just use Google, for any words that you find in your studies. So let me just go back in here. Let's start a new challenge. We'll go timed. Inhabitant, right? So we'll say, oh, I got lucky. All right. Premeditated. Wow, I'm getting pretty lucky here. Ooh, I'm getting all these right. Okay, finally. Oh, it doesn't stay. All right. Sorry about that. But what you want is you want to find a word that you don't know. So we'll say vigilant is a word we don't know. All you're going to do is you're going to go into Safari or Google or whatever, and you just want to look that word up. So what was the word again? Vigilant. Now, I remember vigilant because I know vigilante justice.
Vigilant.
Cool. And you can actually push the speaker button there and it'll say the word. But what you want is you want the word itself. Vigilant. You want the definition, and you want to write that all the way out. That way you have, like, inside of definitions are the perfect words for word knowledge questions. Because they use words from definitions to like expand for more words. So any word that you don't recognize in a definition is another word that you want to add to your word bank. So keeping careful watch for possible danger or difficulties. All right, so danger, difficulty. All right. And then the meaning can be whatever it means to you. So like for me, I like to explain things through my dogs, right? I think Baloo is very vigilant. He's always on the lookout. Anytime somebody's outside walking across the street, he runs over and barks. He's got a very careful watch for possible danger and difficulty. And so using it for something that applies to you is going to help you to remember the word a lot. And then the other way that you memorize these words very like the best is you use them in conversation. So if I say, to my best friend, I say, "Hey, Gage, you're very vigilant for, things that are on the road, right? You're keeping an eye out for whatever hazards are ahead and all that kind of stuff." That's going to help me to remember that word. If I use it in conversation, that's how it really can stick to your brain. And then when you see that word or any word like it, vigilante, to hold a vigil for someone, right? If you've ever heard that, hold a vigil. It's about keeping that awareness, right? Careful watch. And so using those types of words in your day-to-day conversation is going to help you to really get more and more prepared for your word bank. All right, awesome. So Emily, did you have any other questions or anything else that you wanted covered today?
So far, no. Everything seems good. The algorithm that you gave me right now that works perfect for me because I get very confused with words, especially because English is my second language. So it's kind of complicated sometimes. But this really helps the word bank.
Awesome. Yeah, of course, of course. And a lot of times, a lot of students, I've taught many people who have English as a second language. Oftentimes it's treated as a major disadvantage, and I can see that. But in some ways, there it could be Latin based, and in some ways, English borrows from other languages as well. So there are words that you may know better than native English speakers, even though those words are in English, just because you use them more commonly in whatever language you use at home. So don't treat it too much like an obstacle. A lot of it's going to come from treating your difficulties, treating those obstacles as things that have made you sharper and that kind of thing. Dad, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here. Cool. So we've done some word banks, we've done some questions. I really don't have too much else to cover today. I just wanted to get back into doing this regularly. So I'll mention all my stuff again. If you are looking for ASVAB help, my podcast is on Spotify. It's called ASVAB Domination. I also have a YouTube channel, ASVAB Domination. And then, of course, my Instagram, I believe, is Gamonal Tutors. Yeah, Gamonal Tutors. So check me out, Gamonal Tutors, ASVAB Domination. And I'm happy to help anybody. I've been doing ASVAB stuff for about 7 years. If you go into my Google Drive, I've got a lot of different ASVAB resources over the years that I've collected. So I do have a booklet that is available on Amazon as well, but the one that I want to talk about is all this. So extra practice, I've got a ton of different worksheets, fraction problems, FOIL, multiplying and dividing decimals, probabilities, word problems, proportion problems, triangles, volumes, volume of cylinder, all sorts of stuff. So if there's anything that you really need help with, definitely reach out, and I'd be happy to help you as much as I can. But yeah, I hope
Thank
everybody has a great day. Go ahead, Emily.
Sounds great. I had a question about I was looking at the hold on, let me look. You know the fractions where it's like make 70% into a fraction? I really struggled on that.
Yeah, for sure. So that's one of my favorite things to teach is going to be fractions. So we'll just use your example.
70% into a fraction.
Perfect. All right. And so with this type of question, this is more difficult, right? Coming up with 70% as a fraction without any multiple choices is a lot more difficult. we can fill in the blank. But the thing about math is we can fill this blank in with an infinite number of things. There's a million billion ways to say 70%. And so what you would need to learn is the breakdown of what percent means. And so whenever I think of percents, what I recommend is thinking cents. Okay, so cents out of dollars. And so what you want to think is per means out of, and then cent comes from the term century, centipede, and centimeter. All of those are broken into hundredths. So out of 100. And that's the reason it looks so cool, right? This little line with the squiggles, that's actually out of 100. We just made it a little bit cooler and kind of a shorthand. So the easiest way to make 70 into a fraction, 70%, is to say 70 out of 100. This is actually equal to 70%. But that's probably not the answer they're going to give you. That might be a little bit too simple. They're probably going to give you something a little more difficult, which would be something like 7 out of 10. Now, 7 out of 10 you can get by dividing both top and bottom by 10, but if you can kind of imagine taking a test and getting 7 of them right, you may be able to see how, oh, that's closer to that 70%, maybe like a C. There's also going to be equivalent fractions. So anything that I do to this 70 out of 100, whether I multiply or divide it, I got to do the same thing to the top as the bottom. And what that literally is that's multiplying by 1. So anytime I times a number by 1, I don't change it. So if I take 76 times it by 1, it's still 76. But what I'm doing here is I'm actually timesing by a very specific type of 1. So, or dividing by a very specific type of 1. So in this case, to turn 70 out of 100 into 7 out of 10, what I'm doing is I'm dividing by 1 whole, but I'm dividing by 10 over 10. 10 out of 10 is 100%, which is 1 whole. And now 70 divided by 10 is 7, and 100 divided by 10 is 10. And so given that, you can kind of see, okay, well, there's probably a lot of ways to write 70%. One of a more complicated way to write 70% would be if I times both top and bottom by 2. And I could do that over here as well. So if I times top and bottom by 2, I get 14 out of 20. That is still 70%. And 140 out of 200 is still 70%. So these are all what you would call equivalent fractions, right? Across all of these fractions, they mean the same amount. And so what I want you to always imagine when you're doing simple fractions is think of a pizza, right? That's like the classic math teacher. So you think of this pizza, and if I have a pizza with 10 slices, but I take 3 of them, there's 7 remaining, that's 70% of that pizza. But rather than thinking out of 10, what if I had a pizza with 20 slices? If I take 6 of those slices, I have 14 remaining, which is still the majority, and still that 70%. And so this type of question is written, I mean, probably 5 different ways on your typical ASVAB. It's going to be asking like, what is 30% of, Susan's investments if she's got 30% invested in oranges or whatever. But it's going to be this exact kind of question. It's going to be equivalent fractions to percents to decimals. And then just something simple to mention is 70% as a decimal is 0.7. And then the easiest way as a fraction is going to be 7/10. These are going to be like the baseline ways to imagine these numbers. All 3 of these things represent the same thing because you can see that 0.7 is the same as 70 cents. But it's the 7/10 that most people are going to be missing when it comes to the fractions. Great question, Emily. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me understand this, the math. I struggle a lot with math. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it's going to come from exposure, right? The more that you see these types of questions, the better you can get with it. It's really hard to take, a question, what is 70% as a fraction, and then just expand that into everything. What you want to see is you want to probably see 5, 10, 15 multiple choice questions with fractions. And Emily, I will definitely send that over to you after this, because I'm pretty sure I have it.
Yeah, that sounds good. I like to do like after the sessions, I like to do, yeah, like worksheets like that.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send this your way. I mean, you can screenshot if it's easy, but I would be happy to send this your way. Um, this is decimal fraction word problems. The cool thing about this particular worksheet is a lot of the answers are you can speed through them because, like I said earlier, all of the answers are hints to the right answer. Like if you can eliminate three answers, you can get the right answer very quickly. So if I were to look, I like this farmer question, question three. A farmer has 45 acres. If 2/5 of it cannot be used for farming, how much can be used? So 2/5, I know from my experience that 2 out of 5 is less than half, right? If I have five and two of those, that's less than half of my fingers. And so I can look at this answer and say, okay, if I get rid of less than half, the rest of it could be used. So I know that it's going to be over half that can be used for farming. And given that, I can actually go through and eliminate a lot of answers. In this case, half of 45 is 22. And so anything under 22 is wrong. And that makes it really simple. You can see right away, oh, 27 is the only answer that makes sense. And so that's where that back solving and getting a lot of practice with this type of question is going to come into play. But yeah, I'll send this over your way, Emily. I didn't want to go over 30 minutes, but I really appreciate everybody coming today. I appreciate all the time, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you, Mick. I appreciate you.
Thanks. I got you, brother. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, son. Happy birthday.
Thanks, Dad.
Happy birthday!
Thanks,
Bye.
baby.
Happy birthday to
All right, guys. Everybody have a great day. Thanks so much for the support. Bye-bye.